Okay, we are back. Would you like to continue where we left off?
Yeah,
Sounds good. Yeah, so I'm Wa. I'm the art lead on TF2 Classic, and yeah, I'm happy to be here.
I am New Green Shoot. I've been the community manager on TF2 Classic for the past year or so. I've been mainly focusing in the meantime on trying to increase our presence and visibility in the community. And on the side, I've been trying to work on some shader changes to TFTC to make the game more attractive to mappers. And I think that our ultimate goal has been to make TFTC the best modding base for mappers and other creators.
Yeah, what are some of the tools that you guys have that are not engine improvements?
So we have kind of limited access to the engine by virtue of being a source mod, but what we recently rolled out in the most recent update were an override for the base shaders, bringing in the ones from MapBase. A lot of source developers are probably vaguely familiar with MapBase because it's slowly become the standard for creating new source mods. And as part of what they've done with that, they've introduced features that were from later source games like radial fog, parallax corrected cube maps. We've brought in the newer water shader from Left 4 Dead that has support for flow maps and things like that. Um, it's a long list of things, and we're planning to keep going with this. We've been working with the Lux project, LUS, which is trying to not only massively optimize the source shaders, but also bring back even newer features from CSGO that, have been features and used very heavily in those sorts of games.
Cool. And what are some of the things in this beta you would like to show off?
So we have 3 maps that we're going through today. The first one is a map that is already in the game, VIP Badwater, and we wanted to use this mainly to focus on some of the graphical improvements that we've made to it using these new changes. One of those is light directional, which is a light entity that was added in Left 4 Dead, and this is used to effectively have multiple light environments on a given map. So you'll notice that you have the mountains that are facing the moon that receive this bluish light from it, and the ones that are facing the distant sunset in the skybox that have instead kind of the last remnants of the sun peeking up over the horizon, and we think that adds a very nice effect. The radial fog is also strong here, where typically in Source, if you were to rotate your view left and right, you'd see the fog move with it, and it's very unconvincing. And mappers have traditionally mitigated this by just making the fog really receded and non-obvious, but we can play with much more aggressive fog settings in maps now because it moves realistically to where you're looking and where you're standing. And so you have this fog that wraps around the mountains that I think looks a lot better than people are used to in TF2. We've also added the parallax corrected cube maps to every window and floor in the map. It's probably more convincing on floors than windows, but even at a glance, I think it helps to sell the illusion a lot better than cube maps traditionally do, that these are actual, proper, real-time reflections, which is very nice, and that's kind of a limitation of regular Source that has created a lot of frustration for people trying to make nice, shiny-looking floors.
Yeah, and one of the nice things about this being a map that is currently live in TF2 Classic without these fancy changes is anyone who's familiar with the game can sort of see the difference and compare a little bit between the two. And they're all subtle effects, but they all really add up, I think, to just really give that extra polish that our mod is striving for overall.
Just turn down the game a little bit.
Oh yeah, no problem.
And yeah, we've similarly brought back some fixes and optimizations from newer games for features that are seldom used in TF2 mapping. I think the most notable of which has been projected textures, which are used very aggressively in Portal 2, for instance, for real-time shadow maps and really convincing illusions that, otherwise weren't possible until CSGO. And so we've brought in some of the newer code for this, which lets you have as many shadow casting projected textures as you want practically. And we use one of these in the spawn room on VIP Battlewater now to have this vent fan that's rotating and casts a realistic shadow on the floor below it. And on its own, it's not a very major or impressive effect, but it's also very unusual in TF2, specifically because it's been traditionally avoided. And so we're looking for more places that we can make use of features like this to kind of account for workarounds people have had to use in the past that don't look quite as good.
I really wish I had that fog. couple maps I've got that would really benefit from it.
Yeah, we're really
Yeah.
happy with Radio Fog.
It's definitely my favorite change. It just is such an improvement.
And this is, unlike most of the other changes, fully retroactive, so all stock maps now have proper radio fog on them. There's no recompile or box you have to check in an entity somewhere, so it's kind of just silently making the game look better across the board.
Yeah, and for those ones that are map specific, we are going to be looking to sort of update maps retroactively as we go. But yeah, we've just been trying to look to like what maps are best to first showcase these features with and first experiment with them. And I think it's a lot of fun to see.
This is fun. I like the map themes as well.
Oh yeah, just layout-wise, we've incorporated some of the popular changes. We give ourselves a bit more leeway with game mode conversions like this to add new routes and more subjective changes, and players generally seem to appreciate them. With stock maps, we're very conservative about it. We've mainly just been adding quiet lighting improvements that aren't too obvious to players, but just kind of help to make everything look a bit more cohesive. On 2 Fort, we're planning to bring in the parallax-corrected cube maps, and we've already brought in a newer water shader for the middle pool to correct some of the issues that 2 Fort has had with the cube map water historically. So it's expensive now, but it's also not literally too expensive hardware-wise. It has some realistic flow and distortion to it using these Left 4 Dead features, and we're just really excited to try to make use of these in older maps to help bring them up to what people might think a newer TF2 would look like.
Austin asks, have you guys looked into fixing normal maps on breaking verdict static lighting props?
Well, I believe Lux is looking into that. I talked about this a bit earlier, but Lux is a project that is looking to massively overhaul source shaders and fix a huge number of parameter incompatibilities while adding new parameters. And so it resolves countless pain points that texture authors are very familiar with. I believe that's included in the things that it fixes, so that should make life much easier. And then we're also planning on licensing, at some point, the PBR shader from them, which is counterintuitively cheaper than Vertex-lit generic from model materials, while still looking much better. And of course, most modern texture authoring software kind of assumes a PBR workflow, so we're hoping that will also make life easier for texture artists being able to use that if they want to.
Does any source skin currently support PBR?
There's the Stratosource branch that added PBR support. This is used by a few things like Portal 2 Community Edition, but they use a different implementation of it. There's a few different PBR implementations out there for Source. There's one that's freely accessible, but the one that we're planning on licensing is much better, both in terms of performance and capabilities. So we're hopeful that people will be impressed by it once we finally get that in.
So many unfamiliar noises. I don't know what to mean.
Yeah, that is one thing with our weapons is we've been trying our best to make them sort of as intuitive as possible, just to like hopefully not be too overwhelming. But it's definitely one of those things where you need a few matches to get used to everything.
And yeah, as far as sounds go, it's worth expressing that these are all placeholder sounds right now. This is knee-deep in development. We've been trying to crunch out essentially like as many like placeholder assets that look the part as we can for the jam so far.
Yeah, so just about anything you see here is subject to change, all that good stuff. But it's an idea.
A little beta logo in the top left, which is unfortunately covered by Discord advertisement.
You can imagine it.
You can now blast ragdolls around with explosions. I believe. I mean, you can do that normal TF2. It's just a pretty reduced feature. Like they don't take much knockback at all.
Oh yeah, people are currently screaming at me in the in-game chat to make you look at the projected texture in Red Spawn.
Oh yes.
It's gonna be yeah.
Where is it? There it is.
Yeah, you have the rotating fan
go.
shadow there. And so, yeah, it's not the fanciest thing in the world by what people would expect from modern games, but hopefully it gives an idea of the sorts of effects that are now possible with these, because if I understand, I think that live TF2 completely disables projected textures, doesn't it?
I'm not sure. I haven't actually tried using projected textures specifically because I know
Yeah.
they don't work in TF2.
To memory, no one has ever used these in a TF2 map, at least. And so, it's just a part of the broader goal of adding capabilities, especially those that are used to mapping for newer Source games might be used to.
Just love
Also, yeah, someone asked in chat if that's a healing primary for medic. This is a secondary. It replaces the medigun, actually. We've been trying to work on a projectile-based medigun because that's been a very popular suggestion over the years, and we're very happy with how the feel has gotten.
Yeah, one of the sort of trends with a lot of our weapon design is that we try to really make each weapon very unique from stock and really just clearly different to use rather than little plus and minus changes. So you'll definitely see a little bit more radical weapons, sort of in line with the older TF2 weapons like the Huntsman or the Sandwich that are a lot more different from what they replace.
And yeah, past that, we still have 2 more maps to show, so I will probably change off after this round ends. But yeah, if there's any questions that any viewers have, feel free to put them in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Justin did ask, have you got a similar limitation to Portal 2? I assume this is with projected textures, where only one can be rendered at once.
Oh no, we've raised the limit. I think it might be to 5. It's worth specifying that these were always for shadow casting projected textures. You can use ones that purely project light, basically infinitely. But yeah, the limit for ones that can cast shadows is raised to 5 or thereabouts. I believe we also have a launch option that you can use to change that. And the performance is also much better than people were used to in SDK 2013 because we brought in the Portal 2 optimizations and additional features. There are so many new key values and inputs for projected textures, it's unreal. You can set linear and quadratic now properly. You can set the attenuation, you can set the filter size. You can really fine-tune the appearance of them to be what you want them to be.
Oh, 60 seconds left.
Oh yeah, the haste buff on that soldier. That is the new melee weapon that we've added for the civilian. Well, a melee weapon might be misleading because he only has one weapon anyways. But it replaces the mini crit boost with one that provides haste. And this affects basically everything about your class. Your firing speed, your reload speed, your movement speed. So everything is a little bit faster. And so it has some specific advantages and disadvantages compared to mini crits. You don't get the negation of damage fall off that you typically get with mini crits. But at the same time, most weapons with a higher fire rate can still do a huge amount of damage.
Yeah, I think that'll prove to be especially interesting on the next map that we want to show off, which is going to be fun.
Right. See, FMS Joss asks how many ideas for weapons we guys go through, and if we have a clear idea for the scale of updates. I think we usually determine the scale, at least as we go along, based on essentially like how much manpower we have to actually bring to life the ideas that we're concepting. And so this kind of ebbs and flows with the season, how many developers are in school, how many are actively working on this project and not busy with other things in their life. So there's not like a solid answer for that. It shifts over the course of development. We do go through a lot of ideas. There are a lot of weapons that end up on the cutting room floor. In the most recent patch we put out, we actually shipped a file in the game that includes a list of scrapped weapons and the attributes for them, so the community is able to recreate them for custom weapon servers and the like if they so wish. And I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to do similar things in the future, because there's often a lot of development effort that goes into ideas that still inevitably don't make the cut. They aren't as fun as we want them to be, they don't feel as intuitive, they aren't good to play against. But we want that work to be useful to some people in some way.
Yeah, and one of the things I've been interested in putting out more on our official blog is sort of behind-the-scenes developer-style blog posts. So we very well might talk about maybe in more depth some of those sort of cut weapons or the evolution of maps, because I definitely think it's interesting to see how much these things can change and come and go over the course of our development cycles. There's a lot, is the short answer.
Yeah, I think something that people appreciated from Valve is whenever they would kind of pre-announce their weapon balance changes, for instance, and you really go through their mentality as a game designer and the motivation for making those changes, which I think help people understand exactly why they were made. And so I would like us to move in a similar direction where we're really transparent about the decisions that we make, why we make them, how this benefits the game. Because I think otherwise, if you just sit on the outside and have this kind of opaque view into the development process, it can be a lot more confusing why certain things happen.
Oh, and I'm assuming we'll probably want to change map here.
Oh yeah, I'll go ahead and change the map now just to make sure that we can get through everything in time.
Sounds good. Hard cut.
Yeah, a little unpleasant, sorry. I hadn't realized there was a round change in the meantime. I was a bit caught up.
Two bridge.
All right, yeah, this is one of our new maps that is currently in development.
This is probably at least a little bit familiar to people that have been around TF2 maps for a while, because this is an ABP map that he has revived an ancient layout for to convert into a VIP race map, which
Yes,
is
I
a new
remember
game
playing
mode that we've been
this.
trying to work on.
This was a robot destruction in the past.
It has been through many game modes, but latest iteration of it, people have gotten very happy with the way this plays. We've been trying to make a symmetrical VIP game mode work, and this I think adds the most interest to it compared to some other attempts that we've seen from the community. So this
Yeah,
has
this is. I'm sorry,
it has
go
a
on.
bridge point that unlocks it, and then if the VIP dies while the bridge is captured, then it resets the point and you have to go back again. So it adds a lot more pressure to keep the VIP alive through it. And we've tried to help communicate the unintuitiveness of this game mode through using the game instructor. This was another feature that we backported that was originally from Left 4 Dead and used to help signal players to go towards certain objectives and things and provide critical information in a very clear way. And we've made some adjustments to it to make it look and feel a bit more native to TF2. But it has all the same features that it did in Left 4 Dead, and we've started to make more use of this in official maps where it makes sense. Compared to game text TF, it's much, much, much more configurable and flexible. And, you know, we're excited that it might let people make more experimental map concepts without them being as unintuitive to players.
Maximum number of lines.
Do we still have the increase? I know that we were trialing an increase a while back. I'm not actually sure if we reverted that or not.
Should be.
Yeah, I think we still
yeah.
do. It's 6 right now.
Yeah.
Well, that's what that sound is. I was wondering why there was a siren turning on and off all the time. What's happening?
Oh, that's when the
This is
VIP
Henry's
dies, right?
gun.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, the
AI
A
gun.
cannon. Yeah.
Yeah, our sound designer tried to make something akin to an air raid siren for it, and it wasn't exactly perfect the first time. People complained it came across as being a bit too loud, you know, but the sound was
Yeah,
revised in the next patch, and people became
Exactly,
very happy
exactly.
with it after that. It kind of helps to communicate the oppressive terror of the weapon in a convincing way. And yeah, so obviously we've had many art pass ideas for this map, but currently it's still in the pre-development stage, just trying to finalize the layout before we get into that properly. But
Oh yeah, and I definitely think this is going to be a fun map to talk about the behind the scenes of in a blog post, like I was mentioning, just because it is it's a very unique one I find, especially for a game mode that is totally new for us to develop. Like we sort of mentioned before, there was a lot of layouts and things trialed for this game mode, VIP race, and it was interesting getting here, definitely.
yeah, because on the surface, I think symmetrical VIP is something that can be interpreted in many different ways, and you can implement it lots of different ways. And people have implemented it lots of different ways. There have been a lot of community takes on this that have kind of beaten us to the punch. But we're still trialing things internally, and so far playtesters are very happy with this, which we're happy about.
Grande, yeah, the clip is 6 and the maximum number of 6.
Yeah, so the total has been raised. This might be reverted. I wouldn't say it to that. I wouldn't say anything here is final. That needs to be kind of put there in big bold letters. We're constantly trialing different things in the beta and seeing what works and what doesn't. This is just a snapshot of what we currently have and what we've currently been working with. But feedback changes with time as people get more familiarity with different things. And so every single thing on screen is liable to change. And we're going to probably be closely reading feedback to this stream and snapshot afterwards as well to see what people are excited about and what people are maybe a little concerned about. And yeah, shader-wise, this map also does show off the Left 4 Dead water shader. We did make a flow map for this. This is not a properly simulated flow map. This is effectively just random noise, but it conveys more visual interest on top of it because you get kind of like fluid dynamics almost, where different parts of this pond in the middle are flowing faster and slower or in different directions, and so it looks a lot more realistic, I think, than what people have traditionally been able to accomplish, where it's just a moving texture on top of the water. And this only kind of scrapes the surface of what the new shader is capable of. You can tweak the reflectivity with a new parameter that we have now that we brought back from Portal 2. You can add a base texture on top of it. I believe that they call this a sludge layer in Portal 2 because that's what they use it for, where it's kind of like an unlit, transparent material on top that can help to give the water more detail. We use this on 2 Fort, where we have this sort of layer of toxic sludge on top of the water that's mostly transparent. It's very subtle, but it helps to make the water a bit more visible in shallow areas and to make it also have a bit more visual interest than it would otherwise, purely relying on the fog to give it color.
Yeah, we're proud to say our 2 Foot water should be about 50% grosser than than it was before.
Yeah, it's quite funny. The feedback we've received to the 2 Fort sewer water is that it looks like sewer water. And this is given to us as a negative, which we've been a little bit confused about. But it looks very soupy, it looks very gross and grimy. We're pretty happy with that, and we'll keep tweaking it, of course, and changing it, but we've just been kind of, you know, chomping at the opportunity to show off these new features and to give an idea to mappers of what they can do with them that has previously been impossible in live TF2.
No idea what these melee weapons are.
Someone says
Does it even hit someone with it?
the new umbrella unlock looks nice. Will Civilian have an extra wearable to help signpost it? I think to this point we've been trying to make it communicate itself purely by having a unique appearance on its own. It currently has a checkerboard pattern with the placeholder texture, and that's kind of the design direction of it, where it's from a distance immediately recognizable. Obviously, since the Civ can only have one weapon out, it's maybe a little bit different from other weapons that would require wearables, because he can't switch to something else to conceal it or anything like that. And so, hopefully it kills two birds with one stone here, just to have a recognizable world model.
Yeah, it's the wearables have been an interesting sort of art direction, not issue, but sort of thing to think about. There's a lot of different weapons that I've seen our community request. Hey, it'd be cool if there's a wearable of this, but we've been trying to keep it pretty reserved to weapons that have a constant effect on the player even when they're not out. And so, yeah, since the civilian can't normally put weapons away, hopefully we shouldn't need that, but it is something to think about.
It is maybe a strength of the game not having cosmetics, that we have a bit more design flexibility to add wearables to signify things that actually affect gameplay without worrying about conflicting with user cosmetics.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've really enjoyed about working on the project is we just have a lot less sort of baggage, which just means we have a lot more freedom to sort of, go in our own direction and try and sort of keep this old school TF2 feeling alive, hopefully.
Let's see, Custard asks, Valve used Houdini to make their flow maps. Is there any way for shader artists to better make flow maps for their maps? We've looked into this. You can actually use Houdini directly. It's quite an expensive piece of software, obviously. You can go through alternative routes if you are that type of person. But there are other options available that might be more tenable for most creators. We used a free tool called Flow Map Painter for this map, which isn't really a simulation tool in as much as it's a manually make a flow map tool by, clicking and dragging around a texture surface. And that will work for, I think, most people that just want to add visual interest without making a proper simulation. But there are some tools that will try to simulate this for you. There's like an older one called Flow Map Generator where you can import a piece of level geometry and then generate a flow map out of it. I believe there may be some plugins for Blender and Godot that do similar things, and they'll give you a flow map texture that's mutually intelligible with source and the shader that we brought in. I assume creators will probably experiment and find whatever tool works best for them and their needs and their workflow. It's definitely a little bit niche. There's a guide from 2012 on making flow maps for Portal 2 that has been our primary reference for this. But yeah, we're going to keep working with it and probably publish some official documentation on how to best use these features as we go along, because even besides flow maps, we've picked up on a lot of things from trying to make new water materials using the Left 4 Dead water shader that would probably be interesting to the community, because the Valve developer community is a little bit sparse on these things, because there is a much smaller mapping community for newer Source games compared to older ones, and so there just hasn't been as much work over the years to document how to use these features.
Oh, I see you've discovered the air hockey table.
This table has made playtesting so goddamn hard because people will just go to the air hockey table and play air hockey instead of playing the map. And so one team will roll over the other, and they'll ask, where was red team? And the answer was, they were all in spawn playing air hockey.
We should have made this a jam segment.
Oh man.
Jam air hockey.
Yeah, this is not what the VIP is paying you guys for. Come on now.
So we'll give this one more round, and then we'll go to our final map of the night. The final map is a completely new layout and new art test that we've been making for the game. So that might be exciting to some people.
Yeah, also one other thing. Is this resupply cabinet grimier than normal?
You might have stumbled upon one of the changes that we added as well, which is full Lambert shading. And this is closely imitating the beta style shading that... There's kind of mixed stories on exactly how it happened, but in Source 2007 they broke support for disabling half Lambert on materials that used Phong shading. And then they brought this back later for Alien Swarm as a shader parameter, and then we have finally brought that back as a part of the other shader changes. And so what we've been experimenting with in the beta was re-enabling full Lambert shading on all model materials that use Phong shading, which is a surprisingly subtle effect, to be honest. Especially on most props, people won't notice the difference until you point it out to them. But it helps to give everything much sharper lighting that kind of helps fit the TF2 style better by most people's expectations. Currently, playtesters are very happy with it, and they found that especially player models look much better than they did before with the full Lambert shading. This will obviously be attached to a toggle. You can very trivially go and disable this if you want to imitate the shading that Live TF2 currently has, but we thought it might be a unique direction to bring the game in design-wise to help not only distinguish it from Live TF2, but just to look more interesting than Live TF2.
Yeah, it gives these very sharp sort of illustrative shadows, and I guess, yeah, like you mentioned, sort of the best way to get an idea of what that looks like is like the promotional images and things from the TF2 beta. So it sort of gives you an idea for roughly how it looks. That said, though, we will be tweaking it to sort of match our wants and needs.
Yeah, we already use a custom light warp with it to raise the brightness of players, because there was a very valid concern early on that because this makes players so dark whenever they're in shade, it would impair gameplay. And so by raising the brightness of the light warp, we've kind of artificially made players brighter, regardless of their lighting conditions, which helps to mitigate that and make sure that there's a certain level of readability regardless of where players are, while still keeping the nice, dynamic, high contrast light that this introduces.
Yeah, I'm noticing a lot of the props that I'm used to just look a bit nicer.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of the intended goal to make everything look subtly nicer in ways that players maybe can't put their fingers on, but they go back to Live TF2 afterwards, and they feel that everything then looks a little bit worse.
Yeah, that's been one of the really fun things with all these technical things we've been working on is, as like the art lead and as like a very, art-oriented person, um, they work hand in hand really well, and it just really brings that extra little, 10%, 20% of polish to the visuals.
Yeah, and regarding full Lambert again, like this was such a last-minute change by LiveTF2 that if you look at the Steam store screenshots for the game, they clearly still have full Lambert enabled. So it was broken at some point after that, right before release. And they talk about in a lot of their papers how essential this shading technique is to the look of the game.
Yeah,
And
and like
so
how proud they are.
we've been like a little bit giddy about the idea of kind of reintroducing this style that clearly was very fundamental to the game at that kind of late point during its development when they were really honing the art style. And it kind of maybe connects TF2 Classic back to its classic roots a bit more, which might be good in response to some of the criticism that we've been, adding weapons in game modes that clearly weren't in 2008.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's a good segue to talk like a little bit about our design philosophy as a whole. Um, I would say like one of the big things is that obviously we are working on new things like you've mentioned, new weapons, new game modes, new maps. So I know that there has been some talk about, you know, you know, what exactly how does this work with like classic TF2 and whatnot? And it really is just about trying to capture that sort of general vibe and feeling. And obviously that is very subjective. So we've had many internal conversations on what exactly that, comes down to and what that means to everybody. Um, but the general sort of consensus is just, more polished, more focused on sort of core TF2 style gameplay. And yeah, just generally trying to sort of carry on the spirit of those early weapons, those early game modes. And ideally, that sort of feeling that you had back in the day of like not knowing what new weapon might be around the corner, but knowing that it would be, really interesting and provide some new gameplay.
Yeah, I think that this has changed maybe a little bit over the lifetime of TF2C because whenever it first started, it was a very strictly beta accurate mod. There was not like Pyro Air Blast, there was only some imported beta weapons. They kept a lot of things that I think later were recognized as bad ideas for a reason, things that were improved upon. And so there's maybe been a refocusing over the last few years where we're not trying to be a beta accurate mod, but we're trying to take things from the beta insofar as we think they're good ideas in their own right, and to especially adhere very closely to the art style that the game had originally, instead of the, diversion that it saw later on. And so we're hoping we can match up to the style and consistent quality that updates for Live TF2 had during its first few years, and to, like Wah said eloquently, to kind of evoke that feeling that players might have had whenever they played the game back in its heyday waiting for new updates.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things I think about this being just a passion project. It's just the amount of passion that everybody has for TF2, and it's just been awesome to work on it with everybody that's really excited to do all these things. And it's so cool to be on this side of things and just get to see the community enjoy new TF2 content. I imagine after this round we'll probably want to switch maps here.
Yeah, this will be the last round.
Sounds good.
Or last round for this map, rather. Yeah, we still have the new map to show off.
If you get an Uber with this nade gun real fast.
Yeah, we've been trying to fine-tune that. It's, I think, slower than the Medigun if you're only healing one or two targets, but if you're able to heal a large crowd of players that are bunched up together with its splash projectile, then you can build Uber much faster. Which is maybe compensated for by the fact that it has a bit less utility, because you can only Uber in one static location. You can't really push in with it.
Yeah, I know our gameplay lead isn't here, but they've been doing a great job just trying to get all this stuff balanced. As you can imagine, it's a lot of work.
Oh, sudden death.
Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, this is actually one of those features that we re-added from early TF2 even.
Oh, I forgot that casual mode disabled sudden death. It did, didn't it? Yeah, we actually had an issue where we were testing a TC National before, and there was some bug with it that only happened if you had sudden death enabled, and it was completely unnoticed on live TF2 because they just would never reach sudden death in TF2Maps playtesting.
Like I have one map which is prone to stalemating, and sudden death would just be a really nice way to end the round when that happens.
Yeah, I think it's a really fun little palate cleanser and just sort of change the pace.
Yeah, because of course some people have reasonable objections to the way that TF2 does arena mode, but I think in small doses, a little bit of arena mode is a treat. It's a lot more palatable to players.
Yeah, because people like the concept of arena modes, and when it was put back in as part of Graveyard a few years ago, a couple of years ago, a lot of people really liked it at first, and then they got sick of it real fast.
Right.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where we're also looking to reduce the map timer on our arena maps, so you don't have to endure 30 minutes of it.
Yeah, because of course we have arena-specific config files that let us make it so arena maps will just run for maybe 10 minutes or so, and then you get back to your standard TF2 fare, and that will help to compensate for it.
All right, here's our last map of the stream. I guess I should say, I'd say this map is like about 90% done with the art pass. So this is kind of a fun little change of pace, maybe. There's also some nice custom textures that our artists have been helping out with on display here, especially for the
Yeah.
skybox.
This is still obviously unfinished in a few places, but there has been an enormous amount of work that has gone into art passing this and making custom materials so far, and trying to make a map that really kind of feels like what you would expect an early TF2 map that's, stuck closely to the art style to look like.
Yeah, I've art passed a lot of TF2 maps my time, and I think this one has probably taken the longest.
How long have you guys been on this one for?
Oh, geez. Well, I would say I'm not sure when the layout was first created off the top of my head, but I think I started art passing this um, right after, I believe, like February or so.
That's the year then.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, we're quite happy with how it plays so far, and this also might be a good showcase of the domination game mode for viewers that have not played TF2 Classic before, which is relatively familiar. You can think of it as essentially just a different way to show off King of the Hill with multiple points that you can own at once.
Yeah, this is kind of continuing the trend of your King of the Hills, your Capture the Flags, where it's a game mode you see in other games that you might have seen live TF2 carry over back in the day.
Oh, sorry, I just realized I had my Discord muted for a second. Did I talk over anybody?
No.
I think you're all good, yeah.
Okay.
You got quite the situation happening here.
Yeah, and I mean, past that, it's probably worth mentioning that we're also always looking for developers. And so, if anyone that's watching this does want to apply or contribute some of their work, we would love to feature it inside the game. We're constantly trying to get community content at the forefront. We already host a custom map server where we run a fair few maps from live from TF2 Maps creators just to see how they play in TF2 Classic and see how players feel about them. And we've historically reached out to mappers who have really popular maps to see if they want to get their map included in TF2 Classic as well. Because it's a very reliable base of players that will be playing your map day in, day out, rating it, giving feedback, etc. This is already what happened with ABP, where we just kind of directly approached him based on the positive reactions that we had to his maps, Caper, Pelican Peak, Jin, inside the custom map server. And then we ended up adding all of those with some additional work to make them fit better in TF2C and to take advantage of our game-specific features. And, we're excited about maybe doing that for other mappers in the future, whether us approaching them or them going through the application process and us reviewing them to see if, we'd want to have their work included, if they'd want to work with us on both assisting in the development of in-house maps or just making maps outright. And this goes for many different fields as well. Texture artists, model artists, programmers. Essentially everything is useful for us because we are fully volunteer run. We don't give out any money, we don't take any money. It's purely based on passion.
Yeah, very well said. It's a very fun environment as well. I would say, like, for example, with this map, there's the layout was made by one person. I've mostly been art passing it. We had an artist who helped with some of the building and inbound textures, like the ground blend. Then we had another artist who painted the skybox textures. So it's really cool. It's a neat experience of being able to work with all these different uh, fields and have everybody come together to really make a product that's as polished as it can be.
Yeah, even for creators that are inexperienced, I think that there's something attractive about working as a part of a team that's regularly meeting, that you can freely ask for help from, and that is all kind of working collectively to make, the best final product that we can.
Yeah, we have very frequent playtesting as well, so that's always fun. You always get to hop in at the end of the week and just try out all of your work.
Yeah, I like the flow of this map.
Yeah, we have a domination map like this with a similar sort of uh, game mode functioning in the game currently, and this map was sort of made to try and uh, address a couple of the things that we've noticed with that map, Oil Canyon. Um, and it's just trying to have a really strong, quick flow between points, lots of circular routes, and I think it's pretty fun.
And a subtle effect on this map that was added essentially right before the jam was adding these little ghost lights on top of the points that kind of help to shine the team color onto players. This effect is mainly useful with full Lambert, where you have this very sharp, direct, high contrast lighting on players, where if a player stands directly over a control point, you see this kind of like red glow on the underside of them with the normal lighting and shading above, and it just conveys this really unique effect that is otherwise a bit difficult to represent in TF2. I've seen players claim that just because of this shading change, the game looks much more modern than it used to. Like it feels like a, what would in their minds be a Source 2 TF2. And it becomes a little bit impressive kind of how little you can change on TF2 while still keeping within the art style to make everything feel much more cohesive and fluid and modern, without any real compromises.
Oh, and looks like we had a question a little up in the chat.
Oh, I
Um,
apologize. Oh yeah,
yeah,
voice actors for weapons that may necessitate new lines. Yeah, we're looking to reach out to, you know, exceedingly good impressionists whenever we need new lines. We don't want to use AI or anything else like that that is a bit disrespectful towards the original voice actors. But inevitably, we will be adding things that need new voice lines here and there, as much
I
as we'd
think
like
it's
to
should
avoid it.
be. Yeah, I think it should also be mentioned that for those who haven't played, like the jump pad, for example, does have those new engineer lines, like was mentioned in that question.
Yeah, and
So,
we've been happy to see most players feel that the new jump pad voice lines fit very well in with the rest of the voice lines. They aren't too jarringly different. And maybe players are a little bit used to it because even in live TF2, the voice acting that was done at very different time points does sound a bit different just from the voice actor himself aging or having different intonations and inflections. And so there's a bit of leeway given to exactly how classes sound.
Is there anything else you guys want to talk about or mention with this?
I can look through my notes real quick, which I have not used very much, to be honest.
yeah, it wouldn't hurt real quick here.
Oh yeah, I guess a few more just like shotgun features to mention. We are still working on adding VScript for parity with Live. I think that our plan is to have compatibility with Live maps that use VScript, and then we're also looking into ways that we can extend it further beyond what Live's VScript is capable of, with things like possibly even HUD modification in a way that's much less janky than has been done with Lives vScript. And so hopefully that's something mappers appreciate. We've added fog volumes from Left 4 Dead, which allow a very easy way to have different fog controllers affect different areas of the map. There's a long-standing issue with the usual method where if a player does not go back through the trigger that sets the fog controller in a map, then it doesn't reset it. And that's how you get issues like on 2 Forge where the sewer fog takes effect over the entire map after you respawn. Fog volumes help to mitigate that entirely. You have a master fog volume and then, sub ones across the map to set it for a given area. This was a part of larger post-processing changes that we brought in, where we have some effects that mappers probably won't see too much utility in, but they're on the table. Things from Left 4 Dead like film grain, depth of field, what else is there? Just this whole host of things that Left 4 Dead used to convey really interesting effects. A Vignette effect, local contrast. You can set post-process controllers across your map, and you can have these effects at different scales and different areas and everything like that. We've added key values to the tone map controllers that you don't need to use a logic auto to activate it on spawn. This is all from Mapbase. All credit should reasonably be given to Mapbase, which has done an enormous amount of work adding new logic entities and backporting features that mappers would find useful. And we've been happy that we can bring those in for mappers on TF2 Classic as well. Yeah, fog volumes post-processing. I suppose that mostly covers it. There's a lot that we've already shipped in our most recent patch. We already have things like parallax cube maps just kind of open to the public for any mappers that want to go and use them and put them in their map. And we've shipped custom compilers to also assist with that. But the much larger things like fog volumes, post-processing, tone map tone map trigger rather, should be coming in 2.2 or 2.1.3, whichever happens sooner.
Yeah, I suppose all I could say also is just kind of to reiterate. Yeah, if you want to join the development team or you want to contribute something, always reach out. I can also say like I'm always happy to reply to personal questions on Discord just directed to me. So if you want to ask me anything, like I'm always happy to see it. One of the really fun things about being a part of this project is just how much I can interact with the player base of something I work on. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, like get in touch if you want. Feel free to apply if you're interested in developing. But otherwise, we hope to have some of this new content out for you in the not so distant future.
Yeah, absolutely. We're trying to shake the reputation of being this reclusive, closed, private project that gives no glimpses into development. We want to be open with the community and communicate what we're working on, what our intents are, what timeframes we expect. And so hopefully we'll be maybe more open to answering questions and showing things off than people have historically expected.
It definitely feels like Spy is better now that there's no cosmetics.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's a common
certainly.
thing.
Also, no
Yeah.
spawn outlines.
Yeah, that too.
There were many changes in Live that I think maybe depleted the original class role of Spy as being someone that was supposed to sneak around and fool people. And so being able to restore original class roles is also something that we're very happy about, although we're still always looking to add new weapons that can expand the playstyle and interest in a given class.
We do also have a strict policy of no more live TF2 weapons.
Yes,
So sometimes that's unfortunate for people, but I know I've also seen plenty of comments of "Hooray, no more Dead Ringer and mini centuries," which is always kind of funny.
it is both for legal reasons and because, we really would like to push ourselves to come up with actual, original, unique concepts. And obviously, people will see parallels to life weapons. For instance, there's been the anchor that people have probably seen during this stream that allows soldiers to essentially translate their fall damage into a damage radius on the ground whenever they land that affects enemies, an earthquake type effect. And so the natural comparison is like the Market Gardener, for instance. But I think that the liberation of it being not literally the Market Gardener lets us expand upon the idea and take it in new directions. And we think that this implementation of the basic gameplay concept that the Market Gardener was trying to fulfill is a lot more fun and feels much better for both the soldier and for enemies.
Yeah, it feels like a nice combination between the Market Gardener and the Mantreds.
Oh yeah, because you have like kind of the stomp type effect with it. You can land directly on people's heads, and just there is nothing more dopamine inducing than stomping someone like that.
That's for sure.
Plus the plus 50% gravity is pretty funny.
Yeah, I think that it kind of helps aid in the feel of the weapon that you pull it out and immediately sink to the ground like a falling rock. And so yeah, we have many more weapons and maps in development as well. These were the ones that were furthest along that we wanted to showcase, but I hope this is not taken as a, this is all they have after 6 months. These are just the things that we were able to crunch out good placeholder assets for, and that we're very happy with the gameplay of, and that we currently all expect to ship in the next update.
Yeah, and it probably is also worth saying, as you can kind of glean from everything we've been talking about, we definitely aim for sort of quality over quantity. So that is the ultimate goal, just to really create a polished, TF2 experience, trying to get the most out of the least, all of that good stuff. So, but no, yeah, we definitely have more in the works, and I'm sure there'll be some changes to the things you've seen today.
Oh yeah, people are asking in chat how much time the stream has left because they wanted to show another map.
Well, we'll need to move on to the next segment as soon as this map is over.
Okay, that's fine then. Yeah, I don't want to overstay our welcome.
Which is do normal summer maps.
Yeah, I'll definitely be that'll be a fun one.
We will be on the stream today at 5 Paris. I think it will be 1 AM is our cutoff.
Sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we can wrap this up whenever works best. If there's any final questions for us, then I guess get them in the chat now.
Yep. Infamous Draws asks if there's ever a chance that there will be Team Fortress 2 Classic comics.
That's a very fun idea, and we have had some internal artists express interest in doing these. I absolutely cannot commit to or promise anything, but we're always looking to impress players by adding more to both the lore and canon of the game, and to kind of foster community around that basis. We've seen players already kind of run wild with, the civilian and other classes that we've talked about in the past, like the henchmen for Overpowered, and they've created lots of content around that. And so anything we can do to further foster that would be amazing.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the sides of our project that I think we're looking to sort of expand a little bit more than we have in the past. I think it'd definitely be, we have a lot of room to explore, and a lot of interesting things to explore within that sort of original TF2 launch sort of, feeling, and yeah, it's really exciting.
And if people want to play this right now, how do they do that? Not the beta, but just the normal.
Yeah, TF2Classic.com. Go to the download page. We have a downloader that will just download the game, set it up for you in the right place, restart Steam, should be ready to go. We essentially always have a full server in either America or Europe that we officially host, and so it's not difficult to find a game if you want to check it out.
We also have our Discord if you want to ask any technical questions, or you just want to hang out with fellow players or talk to us. There's a lot of developers in there as well.
Oh yeah, for creators, we will give first-party support to anybody that's trying to create maps or models or mods or anything for this game. And historically, if people have requested features to be implemented, we will implement those features for them. We have a direct line of contact with third-party creators.
Cool. Well, I think I'm gonna have to wrap up this segment now. Any final question for the chat? Oh, Bootleg 7 Granddad asks if Heavy will get a 12th slot for lunch. lunchbox items.
So yeah, this is a very common suggestion. I don't think it's one we're super amenable to, because I think that there's maybe more interest gameplay-wise in making him choose between a shotgun and a sandwich, as well as any other secondary weapons that we happen to add in the future. We've had primary ideas, of course, that really necessitate the shotgun, and they work much better with the shotgun, and that's kind of an interesting judgment call as a player, having to choose it over the sandwich because it aids the rest of your playstyle better. We kind of worry it might make him too flat as a class if he can just kind of have everything that we have right now.
Our sandwich is also a little bit closer to the original release of the sandwich, so it's not quite so powerful as it is in live.
Right, it's maybe a more interesting decision in TF2C already than it is in live, and we don't have this multitude of lunchbox items that would justify its own slot, as people say in live. And Bamkin said, when will the seal be added to TF2 Classic? Uh, Even though we don't have player destruction, I would happily welcome any game mode ports of player destruction maps like that into TF2 Classic into one of our native game modes, for the record. We actually love hosting those on the custom map server whenever we can get creator permission.
Yeah, let's see.
Well, thank you very much for the beta showcase and for coming on to the jam.
Yeah, it's no problem. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, happy to be here and happy to be a part of not only the stream, but you know, helping out the charity. And best of luck to everybody creating something for the jam. And yeah, hopefully we can really raise some money for it.
We'll wrap this up now and move to some map casuals.
Sounds good.